There is a proposal on the June 2nd primary ballot in Los Angeles County called Measure ER. It would raise sales taxes in LA County by 0.5%. The money would supposedly be spent on healthcare services in LA County. Now, will this sales tax measure pass? Well, I predict that it will. LA voters do tend to vote for higher taxes on themselves when they are told that the cause is good. LA taxes have gone up, for example, to spend money on homeless services. Voters were told that would clear the homeless off the streets. It didn't work, but it did get them to vote for a sales tax increase.
So a lot has been made of Spencer Pratt in the borrowed election in Los Angeles, as it rightfully should be. But what we just discovered within about the past 24 hours is allegedly the bright, brilliant residents of Los Angeles also voted to raise taxes on themselves. That's at least if we are to believe the idea that the no vote on this proposition was leading the entire time. And then thanks to alleged mail-in ballots who came in the past 2 days, now the measure to actually raise the sales tax in Los Angeles is leading by 13,000 votes. And part of you has to look at this and say, wow, that is so unbelievably shameless. They're doing this mail-in balloting thing when it comes to raising taxes in order to garner more revenue for the city to money launder as well. Give me a freaking break. Although we have to be honest at the same time that while there's a lot of shenanigans, I think there's also truth in the idea that, hey, enough dumb people, enough stupid liberals, right, in Los Angeles did vote for this that maybe allowed for hijinks to carry the rest, if you know what I mean by that, right? There's this built-in cushion that they have with mail-in ballots, but if you reject something overwhelmingly enough, which you would think that the residents of Los Angeles who are already way overtaxed and, just struggling with affordability actually would, then there's no chance, given the absolute failed state of the city, that anyone should be voting to raise their own sales tax. I mean, who the heck wants to do that? But nonetheless, it does appear that is exactly what happened. And so we have a city and a state here who, first of all, cannot manage the finances they have with the high taxes they already have. And so now they're begging the population, their leftist voter base, to go and raise taxes even more, because I swear, guys, if we raise taxes just one more time, magically Democrats are going to manage money well. And I think you know how that story ends. As a matter of fact, it's quite publicly known that this intended sales tax increase is all for the purpose of funding more free healthcare for illegal aliens. Like, they literally put that on the ballot, and the failed reading comprehension, or maybe intentional, maybe the Democrats who are indeed that crazy, just went and decided to vote yes. And so, as I said, I think two things are true. It is highly shady. The proposition is trailing the whole time, and then now suddenly it's leading with the Nithya Raman ballots all of a sudden. But at the same time, yeah, let's be honest, I'm not sure that it's implausible that at least some of the brain-dead idiots in Los Angeles made this possible. But let's tell you about that here today. I also want to bring you some more just general discussion of the ballot harvesting situation, because we mentioned this even back during, I believe, election night, but now a lot of attention's being drawn to the fact that, yeah, Democrats are literally ballot harvesting from homeless people in California. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is something that is known. It is technically legal under the law, although there's many grounds to believe part of what at least the NGOs are doing may not actually be legal, but due to recent California election law reforms, you're basically not allowed to scrutinize any process of the elections. And so this is exactly how you get what they love to call a fortified election in California, if you remember that whole phraseology. But let's get into it. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, out of the same election that borrowed it from Spencer Pratt, we have this LA referendum called Measure ER. And as you can see, that is a proposal to increase LA County sales tax by 0.5%, which, by the way, the sales tax in LA is already extremely high, but let's raise it even more, apparently. And it actually, for most of the results, as you could expect, because people in LA don't want to pay more taxes than they already are, the no vote was leading most of the time. And as of the last day or two, is now the yes vote to raise taxes has now come from behind. As you can see, as of Monday night, is now leading by 13%. That is right. 50.35% of LA voters support raising their own sales tax, while 49.65% are opposed. And so this thing became incredibly close. It took even longer to call this one than the Nithya Raman election, but they did all the scrambling and quote unquote ballot harvesting they possibly could to make sure, hey, we're going to be able to raise our own taxes. And the language of this referendum is actually pretty clear. Right? County officials said that the measure would generate about $1 billion annually, with the goal of offsetting reductions in state and federal funding for various healthcare programs. Okay, folks, what does that mean? What is that referring to? It's actually pretty transparent. What they're talking about is Medicaid, or as it's called in California, Medi-Cal. As it pertains to Medi-Cal, what cuts were recently made in California due to their budget crisis? We're talking about free healthcare for illegal aliens. That's actually a story we covered in the past. And so literally, we always joke about it, but it's not really joking, are we? That Democrats want to raise your taxes to give more government benefits to illegal aliens. Well, California just put that on the ballot, and supposedly in the late mail-in surge, it passed. Yes, LA residents want to raise their own taxes to fund illegal alien healthcare. We're not making that up.
How much money are we spending in this year's budget on illegal immigrant services? Let's just start with healthcare.
In the current year, to cover undocumented individuals in Medi-Cal, we're spending $9.5 billion total funds.
So it's not the $6 billion that people continue to talk about in the media. It's $9.5 billion.
It was a Budget Act number. This is a revised number.
County officials say that the system is under financial strain and they might have to cut some services. Some proponents of the tax blame President Donald Trump and the One Big Beautiful Bill. But that bill didn't actually cut Medicaid spending or healthcare spending in the states. It just slowed the rate of increase. And opponents point to the fact that there are some special interests behind this proposed sales tax increase, such as hospital, union, people that stand to benefit from more spending on healthcare.
Yeah, $9.5 billion this state was spending on illegal aliens. And some of you may recall that we covered the prelude to this story last year, where basically California was trapped in what they claimed was a budget crisis, but in reality it was just due to the fact that, well, they don't have money because they're laundering all of it, right? Because their budget is just so bloated and mismanaged. And yeah, you're spending all this money on illegal aliens who are not putting that money back into the economy. They're massive tax negatives. What do you expect to happen? And you may recall that as a result of those budget cuts, basically they reformed the state's Medicaid system not to cut off illegals from free government healthcare altogether, but rather to just basically subsidize it. So instead of illegals getting now Medicaid for completely free, they're going to have to pay about $100 a month in premiums, which is astronomically lower than what basically any, American citizen paying out of pocket has to do for healthcare. I, for example, pay almost $500 a month in health insurance, and my health insurance coverage absolutely sucks, but that's basically the cheapest one you have. But, very glad that I'm being destroyed by the failed nature of Obamacare, while illegal aliens get to pay a very slim fraction of that in their own healthcare. But here was the thing, right? Is that if the state's in this position, the budget is out of money, they're spending literally too much on illegals. That's not even a straw man. To a large extent, yes, government benefits for illegal aliens actually made California go bankrupt. That's not a right-wing talking point. That's what actually happened. You would think the logical solution is probably to make some cuts, maybe stop giving illegal aliens, or I would just argue foreigners in general, government benefits, because after all, whether you have papers or not, you're a green card holder, heck, you're a naturalized citizen. To me, the idea of immigrating tax negatives is insane. You want to immigrate to this country at the very least as a bare minimum, and I'm not saying this is everything, but at a baseline requirement should be, right? You're not going to be here at the taxpayer's expense, but that's apparently Democrats see no issue with that. But here's the thing. If you ever thought that they would really make serious cuts to illegal alien benefits, you missed the entire point, which is that they're never going to do that because that's their political machine. We explained this with the whole Minnesota situation. They actually use government benefits to buy votes. And you might say, oh, but how could that be the case with the illegal aliens? I thought they're not voting in elections. Well, but even that aside, let me actually speculate on something else here. We also have very often what they call mixed status households, which is to say, the kid was born in America, the kid's a citizen, or the spouse, the uncle, the cousin, or someone is a citizen. And so likewise, because there's that internal loyalty, you'll also get that as well, right? And I would argue maybe that's a contributing factor to this vote, which is that the family members, the anchor babies, for example, of illegal aliens, you don't think they're also pushing, hey, we're going to vote to raise taxes at everybody else's expense because, my uncle or my dad or my mom or something needs to get her Medicaid back. And so this all comes to the point where, yes, it's looking like California is going to vote to raise its own freaking taxes, not even straw manning, not even making it up. LA is going to raise taxes on people so that way they can preserve illegal alien healthcare for free. They thought it was a big Greek tragedy, effectively, that illegals had to pay a little bit for taxpayer-funded health insurance. And so now they're saying, we're going to make sure that's not the case by, of course, raising your taxes even more. Although, I hope people realize this is a prime example of something we identify all the time, and that's the actual Democrat agenda on affordability. Do you notice this? Because they did the same type of garbage in Virginia. Every time Democrats claim in Mamdani, same situation, right? And when they run claiming affordability, you hear that word and you think to yourself, oh, so my prices are going to come down, right? We're going to have economic policies that, I don't know, bring down inflation, grocery prices, housing prices, whatever, right? No, that's not what Democrats mean when they say affordability. Please understand this. When Democrats say affordability, what they mean to you as a probably tax-positive American citizen, if you're watching this channel, that's probably like 95% of you, right? Is raising taxes on you in order to fund Section 8 housing, Medicaid, EBT food stamps, and all forms of government welfare for basically these types of populations. Illegal aliens, EBT Americans, the hood, the grifters who are just, like perpetually welfare addicted, delinquent individuals, right? That's what it's really about. And understand, too, that is the Democrat base. And so that's what they mean when they say affordability. They don't mean actually lowering everyday prices for you, a taxpayer, because their base, the people they're trying to get to vote for them, are not actually taxpayers. And so, sure, you could argue to an extent, Democrats are not entirely lying when they say affordability, because yes, they do help to make life more affordable, for example, for illegal aliens and EBT Americans, because guess what? They get to all live at the taxpayer's expense. And so if you're an illegal alien on Medicaid, or as they call it, Medi-Cal in California, yeah, Democrats are the party of affordability. They make your life more affordable. Who, though, hurts from that? Everybody else, the taxpayers. But please realize, right? Democrats do make life more affordable for their voter base. That voter base is just not you, okay? And that's something we need to remember and really use as a talking point and really go forward into 2026, because Democrats obviously are going to campaign vehemently on this idea of affordability, and we all need to be prepared to address that. That's exactly what they mean every single time. When they say affordability, they mean putting Section 8 complexes into your neighborhood. Literally, what do they always talk about? Affordable housing. We need to build more affordable housing. What does that mean? That literally means government housing, famously the projects, Section 8, disaster, right? And I guess to some degree, sure, that also brings down the cost of housing in your neighborhood because the property value plummets due to the fact that a bunch of Section 8 Americans are now down the street. But is that actually a good policy for you? No, it's very good for the Section 8 Americans, though. So, just something to consider about all of that. But anyways, that is the overall story here out of LA. So, one probably would also assume that, like they did with a gas tax back in 2018, anyone remember this? In order to raise taxes in California, they usually use very misleading wording on the ballot. So when you read it, and if you have strong reading comprehension skills, you understand what it's saying. But to the average stupid person, it basically says, oh, well, we need to fund healthcare, right? It's about healthcare. Healthcare is good. Okay, I'm voting yes on that. So I'd assume that was a major factor as well. But hey, maybe that's a case to why literacy tests, frankly, are not such actually a bad idea when it comes to voting. I understand that, oh, that's racist because it was a thing during Jim Crow and it was unfair. Okay, I don't know. We could make fair literacy tests. I'm just saying the idea of you being able to, first of all, comprehend the English language before you go to actually vote on these ballot propositions is not insane to me at all. And then secondly, having a basic understanding of American civics, I don't know. It's like, oh, because that was done during Jim Crow, therefore the idea itself, even if it is applied equally and fairly the next time, is just inherently bad. You can't do that. It's ridiculous to think that Americans should have to know what the heck they're voting for before they're voting. I don't know, Part of me honestly looks back and questions whether the popular history taught about some of that stuff is even true. But still, even then, okay, we can make a fair literacy test that applies to everyone. I have no issue with that. But let me just say, maybe these types of referendums also would not maybe get such support. And these types of voters, frankly, would not get so much support because, I think if you implemented practices like that, then a lot of the very tax negative people in question who are basically sucking out of the system, not putting anything in, and doing so at the behest of the Democrat Party, I don't think that political machine would exist. I think it would fall apart. That's probably the big reason why liberals think those ideas are crazy in this country. But still, of course, we can't forget about the very fact that now it's being given even more attention, right? James O'Keefe, I believe, this week did a whole expose on it, but we've talked about it many times. It's not a big secret. The prevalence of ballot harvesting in legally questionable circumstances from homeless people in Los Angeles. And by the way, the very strong correlation that coincidentally has had with, say, the late mail-in ballot surge of Nithya Raman over Spencer Pratt, and even this referendum to raise taxes on themselves. Well, isn't that very convenient that people who are paying absolutely $0 in taxes are the ones who want to raise the taxes, right?
And the first assistant U.S. attorney in L.A., Bill Asaley, says California has refused to give the federal government its voter rolls and allows first-time voters to use IDs like gym and debit cards. Asaley also writes, California allows third parties to collect and turn in ballots on voters' behalf, a practice known as ballot harvesting with few restrictions. This makes it difficult to track who actually received, completed, and submitted each ballot. Now, Asaley says there are ongoing voter fraud investigations here in Southern California. He points to a recent woman who was arrested for allegedly paying people on Skid Row to register to vote.
Well, hey, we told you that was happening. We told you that was a widespread practice by NGOs and shady leftists in California, and now at least someone's getting arrested for doing so. But at the same time, is it going to retroactively change the results of the election? Well, we can pray and hope for some court interference, and that would be a very good thing, especially the Supreme Court case on whether election month accepting ballots after election day is even legal, which it really shouldn't be. But still, is it going to necessarily change the outlook in LA? I'm not sure about that. And part of me almost feels like we ought to just rip the Band-Aid off at this point and say, okay, almost like maybe Nithya Raman should just be the mayor so that people get what they deserve. At the same time, the people of that city, as someone who is from there, are so mentally enslaved in a sense that they will never get it. It's like they're just going to blame Trump. If the city goes to crap even worse, they're just going to say that's Trump's fault. If the city gets more expensive, it's Trump's fault. Never mind the fact, by the way, the county sales tax that we're talking about here currently stands at 9.75%, which is insane, guys. Almost a 10% sales tax, okay? And that's apparently not enough. They're raising that to 10.25%, over a 10% sales tax. I don't know if that's the single highest in this country, but yeah, over 10% is pretty freaking high, right? And then they're just going to look at, why is everything so expensive in here? Must be because of Donald Trump, It's like, dude, so I don't know what the solution is, but this is basically the most California story ever. Due to mass foreign populations who are not contributing to tax revenue, mixed with legally questionable circumstances around mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting, literally from not just Section 8 Americans, but like homeless people. Oh, look, we're going to raise taxes to fund illegal alien healthcare. And isn't that so progressive of us, right? It's like if you made a Babylon Bee article out of California, I mean, there it is right there. Just what a nightmare. What a mess. But anyways, that said, guys, there you have it. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.